Next, we're going to delve into obtaining additional assets from clients. This is an area that has flummoxed many advisors for years, and that is the concept of clients spreading assets out among multiple advisors under the arguably misguided principle that diversifying among advisors somehow makes credible sense in the management of risk. David, that's clearly not the case. The research shows that's not the case, but the practice is still very fundamental among a lot of clients. Talk about that a little bit.
Phil, you're exactly right. And what we see in the industry is typically a client relationship will have 4 to 5 to 7 other advisors that they work with, just like you and just like me. Whether it's reading Money Magazine, whether it be watching TV, whether it be reading books in the financial services world, or people throwing stuffed animals on TV, we've all been coached and our clients have been coached to diversify assets, and that's beneficial to them and to their situation. However, you know as well as I do that making a commitment to a client that Mr. and Ms. Client, our role and responsibility is to help minimize and eliminate what we have found to be the risks to their overall portfolio or their assets if they do diversify that way. So really, speaking to diversification, one of the things in which you will hear continuously is eradicating outside advisors and building value to earn the right to become that primary advisor. Not ever the sole advisor, but the primary advisor for the client and for their family. So really, diversification and being able to demonstrate to a client and earn the right to manage more of the wallet share.
Yeah, and I find that comes up for a couple of different reasons. 2 main ones that I see. One is that classic diversification aspect of it. If I use different advisors at different firms, then I'm going to be spreading my risk out. I don't have as much problem. You can see in our financial upheavals that we've seen in recent years why people might have some fear of that, even in a particular firm. The second reason why I see that come up is because there's a situation where people get a bonus this year. And so they try to decide what's the best thing to do. And based on the current financial markets and the economy at the time, whoever they know, wherever they've moved most recently, they place the assets in that place. Same thing happens next year and the year after that. And as a result, without any real forethought associated with it, they end up with assets in lots of different places. All good investments, all good providers, but the reality is they're probably not better diversified, they're often diversified in their overall situation. And so that's one of the things that we have to cure them of. The hard part to me about that conversation always has been, it sounds self-serving, right? So you're saying, hey, move all the assets to me. Well, of course you want to do that. So we've constructed a conversation model to help people to talk through that. Jeff, why don't you walk through a little bit how we have that conversation with a client so that they understand why that's in their best interest and not our best interest?
Sure, Daniel. It's built around what we call the 3 greatest risks, the 3 greatest risks of advisor diversification. And it's simply understanding that by having this conversation to help our clients think differently, it gives them a different perspective that ultimately lets them make a decision that, quite frankly, serves their ultimate goals. The first risk is simply inappropriate asset allocation, recognizing that over 90% of their return is based upon the proper allocation, knowing that if they don't have the correct one for their entire portfolio, they're likely defeating the purpose of accomplishing a goal. The second one is understanding that because of a random return within the markets, that it's important to maintain that proper asset allocation over time. That's the reason why fundamentally it's so important that we rebalance, to take the opportunity to take winnings off the table, which allows us to buy low and sell high, and ultimately preserve that opportunity to grow our assets over time. The third risk is inappropriate asset correlation, just simply making sure that 2 questions are answered in the client's best interest. First and foremost, ensuring that each and every investment is a quality holding, and secondly, ensuring there are no gaps, no overlaps, and based upon a level of wealth, that there are alternative investments that serve to smooth the ride, if you will. Linda?
When you think about the people that you deal with every day, the clients that we all have had in front of us, sometimes I think about a friend of mine who is the somewhat elderly but still very active CEO of a very large organization, and her thing is egg farming. She is an egg farmer. She has 77 million chickens. And I think about if she were my client and I knew that she had 4 or 5 advisors, if I were to sit across from this very, very powerful and smart woman and say, you realize you're at risk because of inappropriate asset allocation, and so on and so forth, using our language and not hers, that it may not be as emotionally resonant or maybe even as clear. So one of the things that we found is that it's very powerful to use either analogies or anecdotes. So you take a person in a position like that, well, you have a number of department heads who all report to you. Why can't they all just do their own thing? And if we can make that analogy germane to her business, this is kind of like your business. There's one person overseeing it. I'm looking at my friend David, who you need to know is a football star. And, a common analogy that we use is on the playing field at any one time in a football game, how many quarterbacks are there? So how many quarterbacks are actually calling the plays for your portfolio? Another very powerful way to do this is through the power of stories, anecdotes. I had a client recently who, as he was approaching retirement, realized that it might be much harder for his heirs, for example, to deal with 4 or 5 or 6 different advisors or entities when he passed on, and found that consolidation really made sense. So we want to say it in a way that's clear for the client and also expressive of the benefit to them, going back to what you said, Daniel, rather than the benefit to us.
Mm-hmm.